Thank you for joining us on our open book. Since we're still locked off from our usual set, hi, John Mahoney. Hi, Karen Smith. Mr. Dickens, Catherine Capel, David Pacini. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Or is it Pacini? Catherine Capel, Margaret Peterson, SR, John Mahoney, Karen Smith, KR, Rhonda. It's more tough stuff. 60th anniversary of Truman Capote, the publication of the book In Cold Blood. And we are discovering all over again what a magnificent the art is in the details book it is. Predicting the time, 1966. We are hearing the KBI agents, Kansas Bureau of Investigation. Yes. Well, we have quite a few rooms lined with books, I'm afraid. Are in separate cars, because they are separated, Perry Smith and Dick Hitchcock, back from Las Vegas, where they've been arrested, to Kansas, where they suspect them, let's put it that way, how they're Andrea Elizabeth Mitchell in the murder of the Clutter family. Not at all at the moment. Hi there, Lucy Fellows. And this is the predicted lead agent, Alvin Dewey. They are questioning Perry Smith as they drive across the landscape. He's talking. And trying to blame it all on Dick Hitchcock, his confidant and partner for so long. They were arrested together. And this is painful stuff. Also, if I might just make an artistic observation, remember how all of this is put together. It's from Truman Capote interviewing other Carolyn Sargent agents who were in the car with Perry Smith and recreating the dialogue. Would have had several people. And it's his artistic recreation. It's obviously not a transcript. But that's part of the art of it. So I'm going to read just a couple of sentences from where we left off last night. They have entered the cluttered household. There was somebody with whom Dick Hitchcock had spent time in the walls, as they called the prison, who had said that Mr. Clutter had a safe in his office. Turned out not to have a safe. Only $50 in the household. They're in the bedroom. He lighted a lamp beside the bed and told her, "This is Mr. Clutter. It's all right, honey. It's all right, sweetheart. Don't be afraid. These men, they just want some money." She was a thin, frail sort of woman in a long nightgown. This is Perry Smith talking. The minute she opened her eyes, she started to cry. She says, talking to her husband, "Sweetheart, don't I have any money?" He was holding her hand, patting it. He said, "Now, don't cry, honey. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's just I gave these men all the money I had, but they want some more. They believe we have a safe somewhere in the house. I told them we don't." Well, Dick raised his hand like he was going to crack him across the mouth. Says, "Didn't I tell you to shut up?" Mrs. Clutter says, "But my husband's telling you the God's truth. There isn't any safe." And Dick answers back, "I know goddamn well you got a safe. I'll find it before you leave. Needn't worry that I won't." Then he asked her where she kept her purse. The purse was in a bureau drawer. Dick turned it inside out, found just some change and $1 or two. I motioned him to come into the hall. I wanted to discuss the situation, so we stepped outside. I said, "Dunce," this is Agent Dunce from Kansas Bureau. Dunce interrupted to ask if Mr. and Mrs. Clutter could overhear the conversation. "No, we were just outside the door. We could keep an eye on them, but we were whispering. I told Dick these people are telling the truth. The one who lied is your friend Floyd Wells. There isn't any safe, so let's get the hell out of here." But Dick was too ashamed to face it. He said he wouldn't believe it till we searched the whole house. He said the thing to do was to tie them all up, then take our time looking around. I couldn't argue with him. He was so excited. The glory of having everybody at his mercy, that's what excited him. Well, there was a bathroom door next to Mrs. Clutter's room. The idea was to lock the parents in the bathroom and wake the kids and put them in there, then bring them out one by one and tie them up in different parts of the house. Isn't this sickening? And then, says Dick, after we found the safe, we'll cut their throats. Can't shoot him, he says. That would make too much noise. Perry frowns, rubs his knees with his manacled hand. Let me think a minute, because along in here things begin to get a little complicated. I remember, yes. I took a chair out of the hall and stuck it in the bathroom. Either Lori Dominic, so Mrs. Clutter could sit down, seeing she was said to be an invalid. Was he supposed to think that this was a nice gesture? When we locked them up, Mrs. Clutter was crying and telling us, please don't hurt anybody. Please don't hurt my children. And her husband had his arms around her, saying, like, sweetheart, these fellows don't mean to hurt anybody. All they want is some money. We went to the boy's room. He was awake, lying there like he was too scared to move. I bet he was. Dick told him to get up, but he didn't move or move fast enough, so Dick punched him. Pulled him out of bed. I said, you don't have to hit him, Dick. And I told the boy he was only wearing a T-shirt to put on his pants. To put on a pair of blue jeans. We just locked him in the bathroom when the girl appeared. Came out of the room. She was all dressed like she'd been awake some while. I mean, she had on socks and slippers and a kimono, and her hair was wrapped in a bandana. She was trying to smile. She said, good grief, what is this, some kind of joke? I don't guess she thought it was much of a joke, though, not after Dick opened the bathroom door and shoved her in. Dewey, this is Agent Alvin Dewey. Hi there, Marianne. No, I can't. Dewey envisions them, the captive family, meek and frightened, but without any premonition of their destiny. Herb Clutter couldn't have suspected her. Herb couldn't have suspected or he would have fought. He was a gentle man, but strong and no coward. Herb, his friend Alvin Dewey, felt certain would have fought to the death, defending Bonnie's life and the lives of his children. Dick stood guard outside the bathroom door while I reconnoitered. I frisked the girl's room. I found a little purse, like a doll's purse. Inside was a silver dollar. I dropped it somehow and it rolled across the floor, rolled under a chair. I had to get down on my knees. Just like then, it was like I was outside myself, watching myself in some nutty movie. It made me sick. I was just disgusted. Dick and all his talk about a rich man's safe, and here I am crawling in my belly to steal a child's silver dollar. $1, and I'm crawling on my belly to get it. Harry squeezes his knees, asks the detectives for aspirin, thanks Duns for giving him one, chews it and resumes talking. That's what you do. You get what you can. I frisked the boys' room, too. Not a dime, but there was a little portable radio, and I decided to take it. And I remembered the binoculars I'd seen in Mr. Clutter's office. I went downstairs to get them. I carried the binoculars and the radio out to the car. It was cold in the wind, and the cold felt good. The moon was so bright you could see for miles, and I thought, why don't I just walk off? Walked to the highway, hitched a ride. I sure Jesus didn't want to go back in that house, and yet, how can I explain this? It was like I wasn't a part of it, more as though I was reading a story. And I had to know what was going to happen. The end. So I went back upstairs, and now let's see. That's when we tied them up. Mr. Clutter first We called him out of the bathroom, and I tied his hands together. Then I marched him all the way down to the basement. Oh, I will tell that to Carolee. Thank you, Marianne. Dewey says, alone and unarmed? Perry says, I have the knife. Dewey says, but Hickok stared guard upstairs to keep them quiet. Anyway, I didn't need help. I've worked with rope all my life. Dewey says, you were using the flashlight, or did you turn on the basement lights? The lights. The basement we divided into two sections. One part seemed to be a playroom. Oh my God, a children's playroom. Took him to the other section, the furnace room. I saw a big cardboard box leaning against the wall, a mattress box. I didn't feel I ought to ask him to stretch out on the cold floor, so I dragged the mattress box over, flattened it, and told him to lie down. That's supposed to be a humane gesture. Driver, via the rearview mirror, glances at his colleague, attracts his eye, and Dunce nods slightly as if in tribute. All along, Alvin Dewey had argued that the mattress box had been placed on the floor for the comfort of Mr. Clutter. Taking heed of similar hints, other fragmentary indications of ironic, erratic compassion. I tied his feet, then tied his hands to his feet, and I asked him if it was too tight, and he said no, but said, would we please leave his wife alone? Said there was no need to tie her up. She wasn't going to holler or try to run out of the house. He said she'd been sick for years and years and was just beginning to get a little better, but an incident like this might cause her to have a setback. I know it's nothing to laugh over, only I couldn't help it. Him talking about a setback. Next thing, I brought the boy down. First, I put him in the room with his dad, tied his hands to an overhead steam pipe. I figured that wasn't very safe. He might somehow get loose and undo the old man or vice versa, so I cut him down and took him to the playroom. It was a comfortable-looking couch. I roped his feet to the foot of the couch. I roped his hands and carried the rope up and made a loop around his neck. So if he struggled, he'd choke himself. And while I was working, I put the knife down on this. Well, it was freshly varnished cedar chest. The whole cellar smelled of varnish, and he asked me not to put my knife there. Chest was a wedding present he'd built for somebody, a sister, I believe he said. Just as I was leaving, he had a coughing fit, so I stuffed a pillow under his head, then I turned off the lights. Dewey says, but you hadn't taped their mouths. No, the taping came later, after we'd tied both the women in their bedrooms. Mrs. Clutter was still crying. At the same time, she was asking me about Dick. She didn't trust him, but said she felt I was a decent young man. I'm sure you are, she says, and made me promise I wouldn't let Dick hurt anybody. I think what she really had in mind was her daughter. I was worried about that myself. I suspected Dick was plotting something I wouldn't stand for. I finished tying Mrs. Clutter. Sure enough, I found he'd taken the girl to her bedroom. She was in the bed and he was sitting on the edge talking to her. Well, I stopped that. I told him to go look for the safe while I tied her up. After he'd gone, I roped her feet together and tied her hands behind her back. Then I pulled up the covers, tucked her in till just her head showed. I put a little easy chair near the bed, and I thought I'd rest a minute. My legs were on fire. Oh, poor guy. All that climbing and kneeling. I asked Nancy if she had a boyfriend. She said yes, she did. She was trying hard to act casual and friendly. I really liked her. Hi there, Jersey Rule. This is a rough section. She was really nice, a very pretty girl and not spoiled or anything. Told me quite a lot about herself, about school and how she was going to university and studying music and art, horses. Said next to dancing, what she liked best was to gallop a horse, so I mentioned that my mother had been a champion rodeo rider. And we talked about Dick. I was curious to see what he'd been saying to her. Seems she asked him why he did things like this, rob people. And wow, did he toss her a tearjerker, said he'd been raised an orphan in an orphanage, how nobody had ever loved him, and his only relative was a sister who lived with men without marrying them. All the time we were talking, we could hear a lunatic roaming around below, looking for the safe, looking behind pictures, tapping the walls, tap, 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 like some nutty woodpecker. When he came back just to be a real bastard, I asked if he had found it. Of course he hadn't. But he said he'd come across another purse in the kitchen with $7. Dunn said, how long have you been in the house? Maybe an hour. Dunn says, and when did you do the taping? Right then, started with Mrs. Clutter. I made Dick help me because I didn't want to leave him alone with the girl. I cut the tape in long strips and Dick wrapped them around Mrs. Clutter's head like you'd wrap a mummy. They asked her, how come you keep on crying? Nobody's hurting you. God. And he turned off the bedside lamp and said, good night, Mrs. Clutter. Go to sleep. And he says to me as we're heading along the hall toward Nancy's room, I'm going to bust that little girl. And I said, she'd have to kill me first. It looked like he didn't believe he'd heard right. He says, what do you care? Hell, you can too. Now, there's something I despise, and that's anybody that can't control themselves. Christ, I hate that kind of stuff. I told him straight, leave her alone, else I'll be a buzzsaw. That really burned him, but he realized it wasn't time to have a flat-out free-for-all, so he says, okay, honey, if that's the way you feel. The end of it is, we never even taped her. We switched off the hall light and we went down to the basement. Perry hesitates. He has a question, but phrases it as a statement. Speaking of Dick Hitchcock, he says, I'll bet he never said anything about wanting to rape that girl. Dewey admits it, but he adds that except for an apparently somewhat expurgated version of his own conduct, Hitchcock's story supports Smith. The details vary, the dialogue isn't identical, but in substance, their two accounts thus far at least corroborate one another. Maybe, but I knew he hadn't told about the girl. I'd have bet my shirt. Dunn says, Perry, I've been keeping track of the lights. The way I calculate it, when you turned off the upstairs light, that left the house completely dark. Did, and we never used the lights again, except the flashlight. Dick carried the flashlight when we went to tape Mr. Clutter and the boy. Just before I taped him, Mrs. Clutter asked me, and these were his last words. He wanted to know how his wife was. And she was all right. And I said she was fine. She was ready to go to sleep. And I told him, this is going to be tough now. It wasn't long till morning. And how in the morning somebody would find them, and then all of it, me and Dick and all, would seem like something they dreamed. I didn't want to harm the man. I wasn't kidding him. I thought he was a nice gentleman, very nice gentleman. Soft-spoken, I thought, right up until the moment. And he mentions an act of murder. Oh, I'm gonna pick this up tomorrow. Wow. Heartbreaking, but so well done. Really, really puts you inside their minds, doesn't it? Which is not a pleasant experience. But, thank goodness we're together for this. I think you're absolutely right, Lucy Fellows. Thank goodness we're together. R.I.P. Glenn Hansard, absolutely. It is, exactly, heartbreaking and superbly written. So thanks for being with us tonight on our open book. We'll be back tomorrow night. Gonna pick it up a little further on. And, absolutely, Carla Atkinson, absolutely. So thanks for being with us. We'll see you later. Take care. Marianne, that's right, it's forever. Midnight? Something like that there? After midnight. Well, God bless. Thanks so much. See you later. Bye-bye.